By the time I was 30, I helped over 500 companies and thousands of people. But when I was 29 years old, I asked myself a question. I said, what are the greats doing that I am not? I'm successful. I've got a great lifestyle business, but I want more. I want to go to another level. And so I looked at the greats. I looked at people such as Warren Buffett, which is one of my heroes, Richard Branson, Tony Robbins. And I asked myself, what are they doing that I am not doing?
Attention marketers and entrepreneurs, this is Valuetizing, the place where we talk about scaling brands worth promoting. If you're a mission-driven entrepreneur obsessed with creating, scaling, and exiting multi-million-dollar brands, this is for you. My name is Santiago Phoenix and I am a business growth consultant, online marketer, and investor. I have helped more than 107 and 8-figure founders increase profits, claim their time back, and transform the world. Now it's your turn. Welcome to the show.
Hello and welcome to Valuetizing. My guest today is Christopher Wick, a business investor and mentor and chairman of Say Yes Enterprises. Christopher acquires, grows, and sells companies that benefit shareholders, customers, team members, and communities at large. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Santiago. It's so great to be here with you, my friend.
Thank you so much. I wanted to maybe just start with a little bit of intro about your story because we were speaking about how you have had several transitions throughout your career. You were a marketer, then an entrepreneur, now an investor. What has been like that journey for you?
You know, the journey has been so similar to many of your listeners of working hard, grinding, and hustling. When I was 24 years old, I started my first really successful business. I had had a few businesses before them, but nothing really ever stuck. And when I was 24 years old, I was so fortunate to meet someone who needed help. And I was able to serve them, help them with their marketing, grow their business. And then I was off to the races. So like many of your listeners, they're probably accidental entrepreneurs. They got into something, they happen to be good at it. And that's what happened to me. When I was 24 years old, I met one person who needed help. It turned out they needed marketing help. I wasn't really a marketer, but I was determined to serve. So I did whatever I could to serve them. And within 6 months, I had half a dozen clients in my portfolio and poof, I was an agency owner. And then I got so into that mode of serving others, helping clients. By the age of 27, I'd helped like 200 or 300 business owners. And I don't say that to impress you or to impress your listeners, just to impress upon people. When your focus is serving, the whole world really bends in your favor. And when I was 27 years old, I thought, okay, I need to do this better. I have a great company. I've got a great lifestyle, but I need to also invest. So I started buying real estate, and I started buying real estate so I could start to grow my income, grow my wealth, grow my legacy. And it wasn't fulfilling enough. Like, to provide happy homes for happy families is one of my greatest gifts. But it was when I was 29 years old, I had my aha moment. And the aha moment that I had, I try to share with every podcast, every interview, every media opportunity, because I want your listeners to have that aha moment now. And it was this, Santiago. My aha moment at the age of 29 years old, I was very successful. At that time, I had helped over 400 companies. By the time I was 30, I helped over 500 companies and thousands of people. But when I was 29 years old, I asked myself a question. I said, what are the greats doing that I am not? I'm successful. I've got a great lifestyle business, but I want more. I want to go to another level. And so I looked at the greats. I looked at people such as Warren Buffett, which is one of my heroes, Richard Branson, Tony Robbins. And I asked myself, what are they doing that I am not doing? And the answer that came to me was, what the greats are doing that I am not doing is they own multiple companies. And at the age of 29, after helping 500 companies and thousands of people, I did not own any of those companies. I helped clients succeed. I've worked with politicians, celebrities, world's major religions, some of the biggest franchises in our planet, and I owned none of those companies. So when I was 29 years old, in addition to owning one company, in addition to owning real estate, I knew in order for me to get to the next level, the answer was owning multiple companies and investing in those. And so when I was 29 years old, with no formal training, no education, and no game plan, I went out and I bought my first business. Now, that was half a decade ago. I've completed dozens of M&A, mergers and acquisitions transactions since then. But that aha moment is what I want your listeners to hear. So if they're an agency owner or a consultant or entrepreneur, I want them to be an owner, not an operator, and I want them to become an investor, not just an entrepreneur.
Wow, so powerful. So what would you say to them? Because I think their initial reaction would be like, how can I own multiple companies if I'm already overwhelmed, if I don't have a life just managing one? I cannot imagine owning multiple companies.
One of the things I teach my private clients is how your business can serve you versus the other way around. You know, when I was 24 years old and I started my first business as an accidental entrepreneur, my mission was to just serve the person in front of me, serve the next client. And then I kept doing that to where then I was in the hundreds and the thousands of people I had served. And all of a sudden in my late 20s, really my business owned me versus me owning my business. Depending on when a client called or when someone needed something or when my staff had a question. And that's why I started asking myself better questions. What can I do to go to the next level? What do I have to learn? What do I have to achieve? What do I have to take action on? And where most people are stuck and where I see my private clients and my students get stuck in their businesses is they can't see the forest from the trees. They have blinders on. All they see is their one business and what they're doing. And one of the things I teach my private clients is how do you get your business to serve you versus you serving your business? Because if you have to show up and press buttons and pull levers and instruct your team on what to do, you're very valuable to your business. And one of the things I learned from one of my mentors, Roland Frazier, is if you are valuable to your business is not valuable, which means you really don't have a business. And so one of the most heartbreaking conversations I have to have with my entrepreneurs is you really don't have a business. If you have to show up, if you've got to push buttons and pull levers, you have a professional job. And when I was in my late 20s, I had that aha moment. I realized, okay, I built this amazing agency. I'm helping so many people, marketing and social media, but this really owns me. And when I started investing in other companies, I started using my marketing secrets and my strategies to grow those businesses. And then through investing in other businesses, I then started to turn my attention to my agency. How can I make my agency professionally managed? How can I make my agency sellable? And I was so fortunate and so grateful when I was in my early 30s, I actually sold my agency to an investor and the investor took it and ran with it. And it was a wonderful opportunity. I had a wonderful exit. I had one of the biggest deals of my life. Then I got to become a full-time investor and then he got a great business. And what I learned from that is how to become more professionally managed versus just a hustler, just a grinder, just an entrepreneur. We have to change that way of thinking. So to give you an idea of what that looks like, in my late 20s, I was working. I remember at my peak, I was working 70 to 80 hours a week. And then I said, okay, I'm going to set myself a goal. I'm going to go from 80 to 70, 70 to 60, 60 to 50, 50 to 40, 40 to 30, 30 to 20. And in my early 30s, I was at the point where I was working on average less than 15 hours a week in my agency. And when I sold that company, the new owner, he was able to even run the agency by working less than 10 hours. So even at 15 hours a week, I was working too hard. And that was something that was a great learning lesson for me, because the more I can achieve and the more I can serve without actually me having to personally do, I can go out and achieve more and serve more people.
And do you think that capacity of having a self-sustaining business, does that depend on the industry and type of business? Because I know many professional service companies, they feel like they don't have an automated business like a SaaS. Or do you think it can be done on any type of business?
Any true business needs to be professionalized. So not only can it be professionalized, it needs to, because if it's not professionalized, The sad truth and the heartbreaking conversations I have to have with sellers or my private clients or my students is you really don't have a business. You have a job. You have a job that's on your own terms. You get to show up whenever you want, but you really don't have a business. A business is something where you can walk away from and you come back and it's still running and it's still making money. And if you're running a really good business, when you come back, it's making even more money. And so here's the thing. When I was working with you as we were scheduling this podcast interview, one of your questions that you may ask me later is going to be about fulfillment. And one thing that I have noticed in my own journey and my own career as an entrepreneur, and what I notice in my private clients and my students, my business partners, is they get a lot of fulfillment by what they do. And one of my messages to my students, my private clients, and my business partners is rather than getting fulfillment by what you do, I'd rather you get fulfillment by who you are or who you choose to be, because we get a lot of significance from being the boss, the CEO, the entrepreneur. And that is a mistake, because if you're getting your significance and your self-importance and your self-worthiness from those titles, you're actually going to self-sabotage to where you're always making the decisions, where you're the bottleneck, where people have got to get approvals. When you finally step back and say, someone can likely do this better than me, and I can serve in other ways by having more companies and more investments. And when it's no longer about you, something I tell my students is zero ego. We're going to play this game of business, and it's a sport. In football, how you know the score is that big sign that says, 1-0 or 7-2 or whatever. In business, our way that we measure the game is accounting through profit and loss and cash flow statements and balance sheets. And in this game, I want my entrepreneurs to be on the sidelines watching the game, not in the middle of the game. Because the minute that you're in the game, you don't have the value of being an outsider perspective, to be the coach, to be on the sidelines, to see what you have to do in order to run your business, to serve as many people as possible. So are your listeners willing to take a step back from all the fulfillment that they get in doing? And can they get more fulfillment in being? And I'll give you an example. In my businesses, there is so much that I do not do. I joke sometimes and say, there are days where it's like, I feel like I don't do doodly squat in these businesses, because I have empowered my team and my project managers and my clients and my business partners to go on and do these things that don't depend on me. And then we get to grow together. I remember when I sold my very first business. I had invested in a business, I bought it, I grew it, and then I sold it. And for the first time in my life, I had an exit, and it was so exciting. I got paid along the way as I was growing the business, and then I got paid on the exit. The day after that, the day after of having this amazing exit and having all this money in my account, I remember opening up my mobile banking and looking at, and the comma and the different digits. The day after was one of the days I'll never forget in my life, because I wasn't fulfilled. Because what now? I had this great exit. I made all this money. There's a comma, there's more digits. That's exciting. But what did I really do? And who am I really if I'm not running a business? Who am I really if I'm not a hustler, not a grinder? Who am I if I'm not working 70 to 80 hours a week? And as I stand here before you each day, I work on average 20 to 25 hours per week. And I own multiple companies. I have multiple investments. I've got great team members. And so much of my fulfillment comes outside of being an entrepreneur, a speaker, a coach, etc. So much of my fulfillment just comes from being who I am. But that's a harder conversation to have, isn't it? It's a harder thing. It's a harder way to look at your journey when you're thinking the value of who I am is not on what I create and how much income I create. The value of who I am is who I am being, and the impact that I create in the lives of my students and my clients and my college kids and my team. That is the impact of who I am, not how many ones and zeros I have, although it's good to have those because I enjoy having those ones and zeros. But that would be something I would have your listeners really challenge themselves on. Are they getting so much fulfillment from being the man with the plan or from being the shero? Are they getting fulfillment from being the decision maker? And are they getting worthiness from doing and hustling and grinding? Because that is temporary, because one day they'll have an exit and they'll be like me, looking at their mobile banking and seeing lots of money and then realizing, well, what now? Who am I now?
Yeah, I think that word worthiness is so key there.
Yep.
Because what I really like about your approach is that I feel it's, first of all, highly successful, but it's very holistic. So you talk about service, impact, legacy, and also the internal part. So on your journey, is there anything in particular that helped you kind of negotiate with that ego? Because that can get so strong. And I'm going to share a little bit about my mother. So she has been a business owner for more than 20 years. And she's at a point where it would make sense to exit. But she keeps repeating, nobody can do my job as well as me. And it's really hard for me to just, like, I don't want to tell her, no, there are people who can do your job as well as you or better, because I don't want to hurt her. But it shouldn't be that way. Like, is there anything in particular that helped you to kind of shift that word, that place where you get worth from?
Well, I love that you brought up your mom, because I can relate to that in so many ways. I watched both of my parents as entrepreneurs work so hard, and they work so hard as entrepreneurs. And there were many times I questioned, are they really business owners, or is their business owning themselves? And something that's very unique about my journey is I've traveled the world studying culture. I've been to almost every major continent, and I've studied almost every world major religion. I've also had the pleasure of working with some of the world's major religions. So I've been able to understand and see the world from different angles. How does the East see the world? How does the West see the world? And something that I learned in my studies in Buddhism is a word called samsara. Samsara is Sanskrit for the endless karmic cycle of life and death. So what that means is someone who just keeps getting born again, and they keep learning their lessons, they keep coming to planet Earth. Now, whether you believe this or not, and I'm not here to have your listeners become Buddhist. I'm just saying I've studied all the world major religions, and I've noticed some common themes. And wouldn't y'all like to know what the common themes are? And what I see with samsara and the endless cycle of life and death, and the karmic death and the karmic path, is there are many people who are continuing to be in that cycle of suffering, where they're living and dying, they're having fulfillment, then they're suffering, they're having high moments, and they have low moments. And what I've noticed in entrepreneurs is, even if they sell and they go to a new business, or even if they close down or they make a pivot, there's a quote that I learned many years ago that says, wherever you go, there you are. And so wherever you go, there you are. And I learned this when I sold my agency. I had one of the biggest exits of my career back then. I've had larger ones now. I remember my next business, I still had the same patterns and behaviors. I still had that same modality and that same personality, because I had not changed. The circumstances had changed, but I had not changed. And that's when I really learned, okay, whether it's wherever you go, there you are, or wherever it's, thinking about culture and samsara and the endless cycle of life and death and the karmic path, can I wake up and can I choose to be different? And it takes unlearning. And one of the greatest gifts that you've already given your mother is by saying, there's actually someone that can do it better. And I know for an entrepreneur, that's like nails on a chalkboard. We don't want to hear that someone could do it better, but that's the gift, because your mother has wisdom and experience that she can go share with others, or other investments where she can now use the 20 plus years as an entrepreneur that she's had to go do bigger things and play a higher level. But you have to ask yourself, and you'd have to ask her, and she'd have to ask herself, what is the ultimate vision? What am I wanting to play a higher level for? Because I tell my students, if you're wanting to pay a higher level so you can have luxury cars and you can own homes, you can have investments, you can own crypto and stock and live life on your terms, Ask me how I know how that will not fulfill you long term. I have the luxury cars, homes, investment, crypto, stock. I live a life that most people dream of. And that is not why I'm happy. I'm happy because every single day, my number one outcome is to serve. Even as I was preparing for this podcast, I'm looking at your website, I'm looking at your LinkedIn. I asked you about your listeners before we started recording because I want to deliver a message that's going to serve them at the highest capacity. And they may remember my name and they may not. And that doesn't matter, because in the game I play of zero ego, it's how can you create as much impact as possible? And that's what's truly going to change a life. If this one conversation inspires you to have a conversation with your mother and she's finally ready to exit and she can be liberated, I have done my small piece in this orchestra that is the universe. I've done my small part. But you have to ask yourself, and your mother's going to have to ask herself, where is she truly getting fulfillment? What does she truly want to do in her life? How does she truly want to make an impact? Because if it's just about the doing and the hustling and the grinding and the pushing buttons and pulling levers, that is the endless cycle of, that is the endless cycle of getting on that hamster wheel. And one of the things I inspire my students to do on the first week when I coach anybody is talk about have a life by design and not by default. What would you really want to do? Do you really want to work 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours? Or do you want to be doing something else? Because we only work 40 or 50, 60, 70 hours because that's what our society has taught us to be. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to ask questions. Can I be curious enough to say, why does our culture do that? Why does the West do this and the East does that? Why does it happen like this in the North? Why does it happen like this in the South? And what can I learn from that in order to take all these great lessons from all around the world and level up and go to another level? And for me, that's always leveling up my ability to serve. That's why I've written books. It's why I give seminars, because that is the highest way that I can serve. And when I'm focused on serving, I'm not focused on my own suffering, because anytime I've ever suffered, it's been about, I'm thinking about me, myself, what I'm getting. And when I just turn my attention to how can I serve this moment? How can I serve this podcast host? How can I serve those listeners? That's going to be a truly remarkable podcast episode. It's going to be a truly remarkable experience if you just focus on impact versus income. I know it's a different way of thinking, but I would challenge your listeners. I would challenge your family to take a curiosity and think, okay, maybe if I could see it differently, and just try it on. Just try it for a few days. Try it for a few weeks. Try it for a few months. What would your life be like if you focus on serving more and your income and your impact versus just your income?
Are you looking for ways to grow your business faster? I have created a free masterclass that explains the 5 levels of exit every entrepreneur must go through. And by the way, selling your company is only one of them. The 8 biggest reasons why businesses get stuck and fail and how to avoid them. And a proven framework to turn your business into an asset so you can achieve faster profits and limitless impact with less stress and overwhelm in the process. If you would like to turn your small or medium-sized business into a valuable, sellable enterprise, this class is definitely for you. Just go to myplantoscale.com to get access now. Now, back to the show.
Just from observation, I've seen that the really great entrepreneurs, they think that way. Like when we see Elon Musk, he's not thinking about how can I make a living. Like he doesn't care about that. He's willing to sleep on the floor, but he's thinking how he can solve bigger problems and human-wide problems. Same with Richard Branson and all this Oprah. Yeah.
Yep. Those are the greats. And if you ask yourself, and whether it's someone we love, like our parents or our friends who are stuck in their businesses, but we can say, what's Oprah? What's Elon? What's Warren Buffett? What's Richard Branson? What are these people doing different that we are not? And as you just noticed, they have a much larger vision. Elon is focused on humanity. He's focused on the continuity of the human life. I mean, 1, I talk about the weight of the world on your shoulders, but 2, that's a dude who may not just be thinking about his own personal goals. Now, I don't know him personally. I don't know how he thinks, but when you're thinking about continuity of human life, when you're thinking about helping orphans in Africa like Oprah does, you're thinking about something way beyond yourself. And that's going to put you in a better perspective. What I've noticed, and if your listeners are on this call and they're thinking, well, I'd love to serve, I'd love to give, but I don't have enough. Or I'd love to donate, but I'm not profitable enough. Or I'd love to volunteer, but I don't have time. Where you are right now there is a way that you can serve that maybe doesn't depend on your money and maybe it doesn't depend on your time. But I have noticed as an entrepreneur, we have peaks and valleys. We have peaks where we have moments that are high, where we have an exit, we sell a big deal, we have an amazing opportunity. And then we have the valleys, and the valleys are payroll's expensive, and I don't know if I'll have enough money, and my staff is living on more than I do. And we have all these peaks and valleys. Every time I've ever been in a valley and I start thinking about the stress of running companies or the stress of investments, if I just turn my attention to how can I serve someone else through this opportunity and in this moment, I've always been able to recover and bounce back to another peak, because I've noticed in those valleys, when I think about how can I serve in a greater way, how can I do better, and that's what's going to grow a company. That's what's going to grow profitability. And I've done that dozens and dozens and dozens of times in businesses, in campaigns and projects, because when you're in that moment of decision of, okay, payroll's going to be hard to make this week, how are you going to solve that problem? And when you're accessing a higher level of thinking by thinking of serving or thinking about continuity of humanity or thinking about helping orphans in Africa or helping kids go to college like I do, that is going to help you achieve more and do more. Because here's a question I would ask your listeners and even ask yourself. Would you agree that you are able to do so much more for others than yourself? Isn't it more motivating? Can't we do more for our mom or a dad or a sister or a client or a loved one versus ourselves? What do you think? Yeah, absolutely. And why do you think that is? Why do you think Santiago can do more for others than he can do for himself?
That's a great question. I don't know. Maybe the deep reason is because as humans, we need love. So we don't want to lose the love from others.
Yeah, that's a hot take. I like that perspective. Humans want love. They're going to do things for love. You could also think about who we are as mammals. We're a tribal mammal. If we're not in a tribe, we don't succeed. So we ought to be in tribes of people. We're helping people grow and do more. And really that question, whether it's you or your listeners or your mom, is really a question just for yourself. Why are you willing to do more for others? For me, what I noticed is I always felt like it was more worthy. I felt like it was more worthy if I was helping other people grow, if I was helping people do, but also it was so much more fulfilling. I always said as an entrepreneur, I don't want to sell like a bicycle, because if I'm selling a bicycle, am I really changing the world? And there's plenty of bicycle people who do change the world. So I'm not poo-pooing selling bicycles. But what I noticed as a marketer and as a consultant, when I turned my entire attention to helping someone grow, I was blessed abundantly with money, with time, with freedom. I got everything I wanted just by helping other people. So whenever I'm in a moment of suffering, I just turn my attention to what can I do for others in this moment? How can I make this learning opportunity for me or this challenge a win for someone else? And it doesn't always feel good. Sometimes you're in a valley and you're in the thick of it. But when you pop back up to your peak, if you just look back and think about what I do in that moment, what I do to make that change, it can be very fulfilling. But you'll notice as we have this conversation, I've not given any tips or tricks to grow your business. I've not given you 7 ways to get more clients or the 3 things you have to do to become sellable. All of this is the inner game. And there's going to be some people listening that are willing to ask themselves the tough questions. And there's going to be some people that are just like, they're just not ready for it yet. And that's okay, because they're on their path, just like you and I both are. But if you're willing to ask yourself deeper questions, you're going to get deeper answers. And that is very exciting, my friend, because that's what's going to lead you to going to your next level, whatever that might be.
Yeah. And for example, you combine all that inner game with being super disciplined, because I know I saw one of your classes and I took advice with what you were saying with sending at least 20 outreach messages per day.
Yes.
So for any of the listeners, it's like, you have to have both, but I don't know. It looks like at the end of the day, the inner game is really what stops people. Would you say?
Absolutely. Yep. And that's what stops people from taking action. I was just having a dinner with some of my dear friends and clients a couple of days ago, and I said we'd given them an action plan. And the dinner that we'd had, we were creating an action plan for them to get what they want. And I told them, I want you to do 100 reach outs a week to this market, to this niche. And I said the best thing that could happen The best thing that could happen is you take all this action, you do all these reach outs, you do all these cold calls, and we learn. Maybe we don't get a deal, but we learn. We learn how to do our script better. We learn how to do our call better. We learn how to do our messages better. When people don't take action, man, that gets me so frustrated because that is the one thing that's holding them back. Because if you're not acting on what you know, and if you're not acting on those deep questions, like when I was 29 years old and I had my aha moment, in that moment as a 29-year-old entrepreneur was to own multiple companies. If I had not taken action on that, I wouldn't be here where I am today. But every time I had that thought and I wanted to go to the next level, I just took action. One of the analogies I give to my coaches and the people that coach me, I have many coaches. It takes a lot to keep this head screwed on straight and achieving and doing massive things and making massive plays. But I tell all my coaches, if you give me the football, I'm going to run and I'm going to score a touchdown. I don't care if it's going to look good. I don't care if I run slow. I don't care if I go the wrong way. If my coach tells me to do something, by golly, I'm just going to do it. If they tell me to do 100 reach outs, I'm going to do it. If they tell me to lift a certain amount of weight in the gym, I'm going to do it because I want to take so much action to where I'm going to see a result and then I can test and measure. Let's say I go do 100 reach outs and no one replies. Then I know, okay, my script maybe needs some work, or maybe I'm not reaching out to the right people. But recently I just did an experiment in my own acquisitions. I did an experiment so I could show some of my students what happens when you take massive action. And I spent 8 working days reaching out to 156 owners. And I sent out 9 letter of intents in 2 weeks. I sent out 9 companies, 9 acquisition letters in 2 weeks because I took so much action, because I was so focused on just message another person, just talk to another person. And if I was able to do it, and I tell my students, if I was able to do that with my crazy schedule and with my holding companies and all things I do, if I was able to do that in 8 working days, and I sent out 9 letter of intents for acquisitions, imagine what you could do. Imagine what you could do if you just committed to taking action. If you just said, I'm not leaving my office until I do my 100 reach outs. I'm not leaving my office until I do my 25 for the day, whatever it is, to take massive action. Because it's not enough to just learn. It's not enough to just consume. It's not enough to just think. You've got to go out there and you've got to take massive action. And the best thing that could happen is you take imperfect action, you learn. When I became a professional investor at the age of, I think I was 30 or 31 years old, I did 17 acquisitions in a year and a half. 17. And I don't say that to impress anybody because some of those were not good acquisitions, but by golly, I learned. And now I've done dozens of transactions. I do lots of great deals. And it's because I just kept taking action. Every time one of my coaches told me to do something and gave me that football, I just ran to go score a touchdown, even if it was imperfect.
Oh my God. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I see a lot of people on the Epic community, and I've been one of them who we start putting in the reps, but the hard thing is just keeping at that, keep doing that week after week, month after month. In your case, would you recommend working with mindset coaches from the very beginning, or is that something you did like once you have achieved a level of success?
You know, I'm glad that you're asking about mindset because there's a lot of mindset stuff out there. And most of our conversation up until this moment has really been about mindset. Here is the real deal, though. When I teach my private clients, I draw a T on the board and I write on the top of the T, it's like a little T chart, like we learn accounting. On one side is mindset. On the other side is skill set. And if you have a coach that only teaches mindset, you're missing something. And if you have a coach that only teaches skill set, you're missing something. You have to have both. So an example of mindset is, I am good with money. That's a mindset. I am good with money. That's a mindset. A skill set is, I can read a profit and loss. So when I'm working with someone who's making lots of money, but they don't know where it's going, or they're making lots of money, they don't want to do next, I have to identify, is this a mindset problem or is this a skill set problem? Mindset is I am, skill set is I can. You mentioned earlier about sometimes it's hard to take action and keep getting those reps. My very first thought, and this is just me, who I am as a coach, my very first thought was, I want to ask them why. Why is it hard? Why is it hard to keep taking the reps? And here's my hunch. And anyone on this, podcast listening to this episode, they know the action they need to take. As I talk about running with that football and scoring a touchdown, as I talk about doing 100 reach outs, I know something's come to your mind and something's come to your listener minds of that thing they know that they've got to do. And the reason why it's hard, or the reason why they're procrastinating, or the reason why they're putting it off, is because they are not committed to the end result. And I know that's hard to hear because people want to say, I'm totally committed, I'm totally inspired. And the truth is, if you were, you'd be doing it. When I did that little experiment in 8 working days, and I thought I'm going to reach out to over 100 business owners, I'm going to show my students how quickly they can get results. I sent out 156 messages. I got 9 letter of intent out, which takes a process. You've got to have calls to do that. You've got to get to know people. So a lot happened in 8 working days. But for me to send out 9 offers, I was highly committed to getting a deal done. But it wasn't for me. It was for my students. I wanted to show them, if you just do the work, here's what's going to happen. So as I was doing my reps, as I was sending my messages, as I was doing my calls, it wasn't so Christopher could win big. It was so that the people I serve and the people that trust me to teach them would be successful. So if you're not following through with the action that you want to take and you need to take, it's likely because you're not committed to the ultimate vision. For me, getting another deal done doesn't inspire me. I've done dozens of deals. That doesn't inspire me. To make an impact in the lives I serve, whether it be my team, my clients, my students, etc., that's what's going to make me inspired. That's what's going to get me to do it. But you've got to understand how the brain works, and you have to understand intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. You have to understand how to use that to make it work for you, and go out and do the thing, and go out and take that action, make your calls. If I had nothing else to do in my world, and I know I speak from a place of absolute privilege as an entrepreneur that only works 20 to 25 hours a week, I am so privileged to say this. But if I had nothing else going on in my world, I would just love to do deal flow. I would love to send out messages and talk to people and buy more companies. I would love to just have those conversations. And thankfully, I have people that help me with that and people that do that on my behalf. But I love taking action. I love learning. I love seeing what I can do better. And then when people say no, and people say no to doing a deal, I love asking them for feedback because I want to always have improvements. I always want to learn. I'm not scared about rejection. Yes, it hurts. Rejection even hurts me. I know that's crazy. People are like, oh, Coach Christopher gets hurt by rejection. Absolutely. But I'm committed to the larger vision. And that's why it's so worthy of my time and attention.
Thank you so much. I think that message is really, 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 really needed because you go beyond just tips and tricks to really the core of what really creates not only success, but fulfillment.
Yep. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Do you want to share something else? Maybe where people can find you, if you want to share anything about like your future vision, where are you going, anything like that?
Well, for all your listeners and even yourself and your family and your loved ones, they can find me on my website, which is ChristopherMWick.com, and my holding company website, which is www.sayyesenterprises.com. I'm sure you're going to put the links in your show notes, so I won't spend much time talking about that. If you just look up Christopher Wick, you'll find me, where my staff does all sorts of cool things online. One thing that I would leave yourself, your loved ones, and your listeners with is, what is that action that you could take today to get closer to your ultimate vision? What is your action that you could take to level up? What is that action that you can take that's going to get you a deal done? And one of the things I would inspire your listeners to do is to reach out for help. Find someone who can mentor you. Now, clearly that could be me because I mentor people, but also it could be someone else. I was taught many years ago, find someone who has what you want and learn from them. And so in your own journey, as an entrepreneur, you don't need to do this alone. You don't need to be a solopreneur. You don't need to just hustle and grind. Partner with people, hire a mentor, hire a coach, and have someone keep you accountable to a higher level. Recently, I started working out with a new personal trainer, and he was new to me and I was new to him. And our first session, I know I totally freaked him out because I told him, I said, teach me how to move, teach me how to think, and I will do whatever you tell me to do. And I have this intensity in my eyes that I could see like he just wasn't ready for that. And here we've been training now for almost 2 months, and he loves it. He told me yesterday, he says, you make me a better coach because of how hungry you are. And my gosh, if you and your listeners and your loved ones could be that hungry and say, I will do whatever it takes to coach with you. I will do whatever it takes for you to become my mentor. I will do whatever it takes to get my goal. By golly, you will get a deal. You will have an exit. You will have all the abundance that you've dreamed of. And how do I know? I know because that's what I have done. I am not more gifted than anyone that's listening. I'm not more talented. I don't have more education. I could almost promise your listeners, I don't have more education. The one thing that's really set me apart from people who have what they want and people who don't have what they want is I just kept taking action every single day, massive action, massive action, massive action until I got what I wanted or until I got the learning opportunities to give me what I wanted.
If you enjoyed the show, hit the share button and send it over to one fellow marketer or entrepreneur. We work hard to make sure they'll thank you for it. Also, to get featured on the show, go to valuetizing.com and apply to become our next guest. Until next time, keep valuetizing.